Hello, my name is Tiffany and welcome back to my channel. If you like sewing and DIY videos, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I am back with another Upcycle by Little Toe where I take old forgotten items and give them a new life, but this one's a little bit special because it's officially May, which means it is AAPI Heritage Month. To celebrate, I'm doing a month of Thrift Flip Challenges featuring some of my fellow Asian creators, and we're starting off with a creator I met on TikTok. Her name is Joanne, and she makes the most beautiful, vibrant clothes, and here she is to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Joanne. I'm a sustainable fashion designer. I have a small business where I make one-of-a-kind clothing using vintage textiles. Everything is handmade and of high quality, so if you like unique, colorful clothing, come check me out at Joanne Sunny K on Instagram and TikTok. I'm so excited to be a part of this Thrift Flip Challenge for AAPI Heritage Month. I'm Korean American and my parents immigrated here from South Korea. Without their sacrifice, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today and following my dreams. I'm so happy that Asian people are finally getting recognized for their contributions to society and culture. Thank you, Tiffany, for letting me be a part of this, and I'm looking forward to this challenge.
I've done a bunch of these thrift flip challenges on my channel before, but basically we have a $10 budget to thrift one or more items for the other person to flip into a new outfit. I am so excited about this, so let's get started. I'm packing up the items that I'm gonna send over to Joanne, and I'm not gonna show you everything, but I have to show you one of the things because it is so freaking cute. I thrifted this duck curtain and I think it is so adorable, and I think she's really gonna like this. I'm also going to be sending her these two things from my stash. I am so excited to send these things to her, so make sure you check out her video to see exactly what I send and what she turns it into. The package that Joanne sent me just came in the mail and I am so excited, but also really nervous to see what it is. It's floral. Oh my god. Ah! It's a two-piece floral set. I mean, how could I not love this? Here is a closer look at what Joanne sent me. It is a drop waist dress and the bottom section is pleated. It also came with this matching jacket, and this is definitely something I would have picked out for myself at a thrift store to upcycle. She also sent me this really lovely trim. I'm in the middle of seam ripping the outfit, and I can tell by the sewing that this was handmade, and I wanted to mention that whoever made this took the time to use French seams, which if you know me, you know I really appreciate. I spent the last few days doing a little bit of research, and I was really inspired by these vintage playsuits and matching sets, so I decided to make a two-piece set, which is very on brand for me. The fabric that I'm working with feels really dated, and because the color is pretty dark, it feels so heavy, and I want to try to make something that's more youthful and playful. I'm gonna start with the top, and I've decided to make a cropped deep V wrap top with puff sleeves. So I'm gonna use this free pattern from Mood Fabrics, and it is a pattern for a dress, but I'm just gonna use the bodice portion of the pattern. Here is the original pattern for the front bodice, and here is my pattern traced out in a size 4. You can already see that I've made some modifications. This whole section here is the seam allowance required for the dress, but I'm fully lining my top, so I decided not to include this section in my pattern. I also made my shoulder seam a little bit narrower and lowered the armhole for a more comfortable fit. Finally, I cropped the side seam slightly, but I added some length to this section closer to the center front. The reason that I'm adding a little bit of length to the center portion of this pattern is because in the original pattern, the top just meets under the bust in the center front, but I want my pattern to overlap slightly. Using my modified pattern, I cut out my fabric, and here are my mirrored pieces. Moving on to the back. Here is the original back bodice pattern, and here is mine again traced out in a size 4. I made the shoulder seam narrower and lowered the armhole just like I did for the front. I also cropped the entire back and I added a dart. The original pattern calls for gathers along the back, but I want my top to have a little bit more of a cleaner look, so I just drafted a really simple dart. Using this pattern, I cut out my fabric, which was cut on fold. Next is to sew the darts, and you should have something that looks like this. I'm placing my front pieces right sides facing, and I'll sew together along the shoulder seams. Here is what the top should look like now, and I'm just laying it out flat so that I can place my lining right sides facing. I used a thrifted sheet to make the lining, but because it's so different to the floral fabric, I decided to make a facing using the floral fabric along the neckline of the lining. I'll sew my shell and lining pieces together along the neckline. I've turned the top to the right side and given it a good press, and just look how nice the inside looks like as well. Here is a close-up, and I wanted to show you that I also understitched the lining to the seam allowance. I'll sew the side seams together, starting with the lining and then the shell. I'll do this on both sides, and you should have something that looks like this. Next is to sew on the sleeves. I'm gonna reuse the sleeve pattern that I drafted for this top that I made a couple of months ago, just because I really like the way that it fits. Here is the sleeve that I cut out, and I'm folding it in half right side spacing, and I'll sew together here. Here it is sewn, and I did also fold the seam allowance under and sewed that in place for a clean finish. I'm making little cuffs to go on the bottom of my sleeves, and I thought it'd be really cute to add the trim onto the cuffs as a little accent. So now I'm just gonna figure out the length that I need by wrapping this around my arm. Based on that length, I cut out this piece to use as my cuff. This will be folded in half later, so I'm placing my trim along the top half of the cuff, and I'll sew this in place. Here is a close-up of what the trim looks like sewn on. Slight change of plans. I got really excited and I went ahead and finished one whole sleeve, and I absolutely hate it. I hate it. I don't like the way the trim looks, and I think it makes it look really dated, so I'm gonna go ahead and make an elasticized waist instead. Take 2 for the sleeves, and I made a cuff that is the same width as the hem of the sleeve. I'm placing the cuff on the hem of my sleeve right side spacing, and I'll pin all the way around and then sew this in place. This is what it should look like sewn together. Now I'm folding the seam allowance up and then folding again to meet the seam from earlier, and I'll pin this in place. I'll do this all the way around, and you can see how all of the raw edges are now neatly hidden. I'll sew this together, but I'll leave a small gap here as an opening to insert my elastic. I've attached a safety pin to one end, and I'm just feeding it through the channel. Now I'll sew both ends of the elastic together, and then I'll sew the gap from earlier closed. This is what the sleeve should look like now, and I've also sewed a basting stitch along the top here to create these gathers. I have my sleeve pinned to just the shell layer, and I'll sew them together with my machine, and then I'll hand sew the lining, hiding any raw edges, and you can't tell me that doesn't look so good. Here is what the top looks like now with both sleeves sewn on. I went ahead and sewed a basting stitch along the curve here so that I can gather this section to accommodate the bust. I did the same for the other side as well. You can gather as much or as little as you want here, depending on how much coverage you want. To finish the top, I'm adding this long waist tie. Unfortunately, I don't have exact measurements for this waist tie. It just has to be long enough to wrap around your body. Starting on this end, I'll fold this in half right side spacing, and I'll sew this end together as well as along the edge here to about this point. I'll leave this middle section for now, but I'll repeat the same steps on the other side of the waist tie, again sewing till about this point. This is what it should look like now. I've turned the ends to the right side and given it a good press, and this middle section has not been sewn yet. Next is to attach the waist tie to the top. I'm placing the middle section of my waist tie onto my top right side spacing and pinning it in place. I'll sew these together, and this is what the top should look like at this point. We are almost done with the top, and just like the sleeves, I'm folding the seam allowance up and then folding again to meet this seam, hiding all of the raw edges. I'll go ahead and sew this in place, and here is the finished top, and you already know that I love just how clean it looks like on the inside as well. Initially, when I was making the top, my plan was to just crisscross the front and then tie it in the back, but now that the top is done, I just realized that I can actually wear it in a few different ways, so I just wanted to show you. The first way is the simplest, and it's just tying it in a bow in the front. The second way, which is the way I intended on wearing it, is overlapping the front and then tying it in a bow in the back. But the final way is my favorite, and I'm just crossing the panels over and then bringing it back around, creating this knot effect, and then again tying it in a bow in the back. On to the matching bottoms. I want to try to create a pair of shorts that look like a mini skirt. And I have a pretty good idea in my head on how to execute this, so I'm really hoping that this works out. I'm gonna make these shorts in 2 sections, and I'm still completely obsessed with the skirt that I made a couple of videos ago, so I'm going to use the pattern that I used for the top of the skirt for the top of these shorts. Here is the pattern for the top section of the front, and here it is cut out of the fabric, which was cut on fold. Here is the pattern I'll be using for the top section of the back, and here it is cut out, and I went ahead and cut out the merit piece as well. Next is to sew the darts, and you should have something that looks like this. Now I'm just placing my front and back pieces right side spacing, and I'll sew together along the side seams. This is what it should look like sewn together, and following the same steps, I went ahead and made a lining piece as well. For the bottom of the shorts, my plan is to gather the fabric to hopefully make it look full enough to look like a skirt. I'm gonna be using a shorts pattern that I already have, but I'm gonna show you how I modify it. I'm laying out a large piece of paper to draft my pattern on. This is the front pattern piece for a pair of shorts, and I'm just going to trace this out. It really doesn't need to be neat, we're just gonna use it as a base. The first thing I'm going to do is draw a line across the bottom here. Then I'll extend this section by 2 inches. Next, I'm going to extend the side seam out by 6 inches and draw a new side seam that is perpendicular to the hem. I measure and mark a straight line along the top to use as a guide. Then I measure and mark a second line 3 inches below it. I draw this curve to join the 2 lines, and this is to accommodate the curve on the top section of the shorts that I made earlier. Finally, I'm adding 2 inches along the hem to make my shorts a little bit longer. I'll go ahead and cut this out, and here is my modified pattern. Because the top section of this pattern is eventually going to be gathered, I think it's going to be pretty forgiving, so I'm gonna use the same pattern for the front and back of my shorts, but for the front, I'm just gonna shorten this section by about 1 inch. I went ahead and cut out my front piece, and I actually didn't have a large enough piece, so I had to piece 2 pieces together with this seam here. With upcycling, there's always that added challenge of possibly not having enough fabric and just having to piece things together to get a large enough piece. But this upcycle definitely tested me a little bit extra because not only was I working with limited fabric, there were also these random white stripes in the fabric that I had to work around as well. I'm placing my other front piece right side spacing, and I'll sew these together along the center front, and you should have something that looks like this at this point. I cut out my back pieces, and again I'm placing them right side spacing. Starting from this point, I'll sew these together along the center back, leaving the top open for the zipper. This is what the back should look like sewn together. Now I'm placing my front piece right side spacing, and I'll sew these together along the side seams. Next is to sew a basting stitch along the top here, which I'll use to create these gathers. Now I can attach this section to the top section of the shorts. I'm placing these right side spacing and pinning in place, making sure that all of the gathers are evenly spaced out. I'll sew these together, and this is what the shorts should look like at this point. Now I'm just turning the shorts inside out so that I can sew on the lining, and this is what it should look like with all of the raw edges hidden neatly between the shell and lining layers. Next is to sew on the waistband. Here are the pieces I cut out for the waistband, and I've ironed on fusible interfacing on all of these pieces for added stability. I'll sew these together, and this will be my shell waistband. Following the same steps, I made a lining waistband, and this one does not have interfacing. I'll start by placing the shell waistband right side spacing to my shorts and pinning it in place. I'll sew this together, and this is what the waistband should look like sewn on. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and sew in the invisible zipper, and it should look something like this. Moving on, to finish the waistband, I'll pin the lining waistband right side spacing to the shell waistband, and I'll sew this together, and this is what the finished waistband should look like. I decided to hand sew the lining for a nice clean finish. The shorts are almost done, and all that's left to do is line up the inseam, and I'll sew these together, and last step is to hem the shorts by folding over twice and sewing. Because I ended up not using the trim on the sleeves and I completely forgot to incorporate them into the shorts, I had to figure out how I was going to use the trim, so I decided to make this adorable bow to wear in my hair. I am so happy with how this whole outfit turned out, and I'm so excited to show it to Joanne. Hey Joanne!
Hey Tiffany, how's it going?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I'm so excited to spend this month uplifting Asian people, so I'm really excited that you could do this.
Of course, yeah, I was so excited that when you reached out to me, it's something I don't usually do regularly, but I love the challenge.
Okay, Joanne, can you remind everybody what you got me?
So I thrifted this kind of 2-piece set. It's a big overcoat with a dress, I believe, and then I also threw in some trim with it just for fun.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for sending me a floral print because I love florals. And yeah, so here's what I made.
Okay, wow. I'm so impressed. Oh, you made the matching bow with the trim in the back. That's so good. I'm so oh, and the shorts. I thought it was a skirt. So cute. Wow. I mean, that thing was a granny suit. So to see it like this is like so crazy. What a clever idea. I love the shorts on the bow. So cute. I love it. Yay.
Joanne, thank you again so much for doing this with me. I had so much fun like meeting you and just like sharing your creative vision, and I thank you so much.
Of course, I had a lot of fun. I mean, I pushed myself to do something that I don't usually do, and I'm so honored to be a part of your challenge.
Bye.
For sure. Thank you. Bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this video. I had so much fun doing this with Joanne, and I'm gonna link her video down below, so make sure you check that out to see what I sent her and what she turned it into. I'm so excited and proud to spend this month uplifting Asian voices, and I have 2 more Thrift Flip challenges for you coming this month, so make sure you subscribe to my channel to follow along. I'm gonna be posting photos of this outfit on my Instagram, so make sure you're following me there as well. Let me know what you thought about this Thrift Flip challenge in the comments down below, and as always, thank you so much for watching.